Prime Minister has this evening made it clear that the country will move into a state of lockdown. You must stay at home. Stay at home.
So today it gives me great pleasure to welcome 4 people from our church who are going to share some of their reflections on what they've learnt during this lockdown season. Not just about themselves, but about their relational connections as well. How have they navigated some of the relational challenges over these last few months? And as Pastor Dave said last week, we're all facing the same storm, but we're not all in the same boat. So the first boat that I'm going to go over to is Diana. So Diana, give me a wave. I won't ask you to give me a thumbs up and a high five. And oh, come on, let's do it. It's so lovely to see you, Diana. Great to have you with us. Now, Diana was actually brought up in Ireland, but she came to Cambridge a few years ago to study for a master's degree. So she is now a clinical scientist working at Adam Brooks Hospital, and she is going to share some lessons on lockdown of what it is to be living alone in this season. Now, Diana is also a volunteer for Public Health England, and so she's been helping out during the COVID crisis. And so I just want to take this opportunity to say a massive thank you to Diana, and thank you to all our wonderful NHS workers and care workers. You know, the clap for carers may have finished, but we are still applauding you. And so, Diana, and to everybody that you represent during this time, we just want to say thank you so much for all that you are doing to help us through this crisis. So then we're over to Ben. Now, Ben is also studying at Cambridge, and he is just finished year 3 of a 4-year engineering degree. And I've had the pleasure of getting to know Ben over a few years now because he's part of our Kingsgate Cambridge worship team. And Ben, are you still drumming? Is it drumming? I can see there's a guitar in the background there.
A bass.
A bass guitar. Okay, so it's been a great pleasure to get to meet Ben over these last few weeks. And when he heard that lockdown was happening in March, literally, he had to shut up shop, stop studies, leave university, leave all his friends behind, and then go back to live with his parents in the family home, which is in Manchester. So he's going to be sharing a little bit about what it's like to go back and to live with his parents in this lockdown season. So Ben has gone from Cambridge to Manchester, and then the next people that I'm going to be introducing is Daniel and Rosie Cole. Now, Daniel and Rosie have moved from Manchester down to Peterborough, and just over the last few months, both have actually come onto staff. Daniel is one of our pastors and Rosie is our PA. So it's been a real pleasure to get to know them, albeit Rosie had barely got her feet under her desk when lockdown happened. So we all dispersed. So we've kind of got to know each other a little bit via Zoom calls. I remember one time we were having a meeting and she was in her car of all places because it was the only place that she could get some peace and quiet. And I wasn't aware as this meeting was going on that she was getting hotter and hotter and the car windows were getting steamier and steamier, and then her phone just exploded virtually. So that was the end of that call. But Daniel and Rosie have 4 wonderful children, and so we're going to be hearing a little bit about their lessons from lockdown, of how they're navigating their marriage and how they're bringing up their kids in this season as well. So why don't you all just give me a wave before we start? Give me a wave, give me a wave. So great to see you. So I'm going to kick off the first question to Daniel and Rosie. So you're currently living in a very, very small rented house. I know you're in the throes of buying a house, so that's going to give you some more space in a couple of months' time. But at the moment, you're in a very small house, working from home. You have 4 children, aged between 6 and 12. And you've got a cat, and you've also had a duckling in the household as well. And in a minute, we're going to see a lovely picture of Naomi, their youngest daughter, with that duckling. So not many challenges there, I can imagine. It must be a breeze for you. But no, seriously, please just give us a little bit of insight on what it must be like living in these conditions that you're in right now. What's been the overall biggest challenge?
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm not quite a breeze. It's been a very interesting season for sure. Yeah, and I think one of the things you highlighted there in terms of space, I think that's been a really tricky thing to navigate, just the lack of space there, and then also just a little bit of chaos in terms of time and trying to organise everything. So as you said, both Rosie and I working and then homeschooling the four kids, and then taking care of the duck we'd rescued. I say we, it was more Rosie, and yeah, just trying to get just all the play and just the ongoing sort of house chores as well, so cooking, cleaning, all that sort of stuff. It just very disorganized and trying to navigate through that. So I think for me that the biggest challenge that came through that was communication, because we realized actually pre-lockdown we would have sort of weekly, maybe on a Sunday evening, we would look at the week ahead and, just see what's in the diary and be able to plan through. And so we recognised actually in lockdown, we needed to take that to daily. So like a daily briefing, if you like, and actually, just sit down and discuss the day that we'd had, and then also plan the day, what were the non-negotiables, the moments where we could talk and that sort of stuff. So that certainly helped the challenge of communication.
Well, I think we've all learnt that a daily briefing in this season is really very, very important to understand what is going on in our world, isn't it? So that's great. Yeah. So what about you, Rosie?
I think for me, like Daniel said, and like you shared, the space of the house has been a big deal. But it's not just physical space; it's personal space as well. And for me, the day is just blended into one sort of mushy thing of: am I teaching the kids? Am I doing my work? Am I cooking? Should I be cleaning up after the kids? Should I be putting a load of washing on? And it's just that constant flow with no break. And I could see at the start of lockdown, I started to get it was just not sustainable, and I started to get really agitated, and the kids certainly picked up that I was getting like that, and Daniel would come down and see that sort of atmosphere. So those are the struggles really, and Daniel's amazing really, because he seeing the struggle and seeing sort of that agitation coming out, and actually in response to talking and communicating every day, we started to realise that it wasn't sustainable. We needed to put something else in. And so he amazingly would give up an hour, and still gives up an hour of his day, his lunch hour, to come down and to release me to go and just go off somewhere and sort of be off duty for an hour, if you like, which has just been the absolute turning point of lockdown for me, just having that bit of space in the day, in kid time, which is amazing.
That's so great to hear. Now, Diana, your experience is really the polar opposite to Daniel and Rosie's, in that you're in lockdown alone. So I know that creates a different set of challenges. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
So just before the end of last year, November, I got a place of my own, which was a big milestone in itself for me. But didn't envisage going through a pandemic on my own, but yeah, it's definitely been a huge challenge, and I have really missed my family. So as you said in the introduction, I grew up in Ireland, so most of my family are in Ireland. I have some family here, but with the restrictions and everything, I couldn't see them, and I obviously cannot travel to go see my family in Ireland. So it's been really challenging not being with them. And I'm somebody who is very close to my family. I would, under normal circumstances, I would have gone there to see them about 2 or 3 times by now, but I just haven't been able to do that. And modern day technology is brilliant. We've been able to FaceTime and communicate over Zoom, but it's still no substitute for that physical connection that you get from being with people that you love. So that has been a real challenge for me. And with that is I struggled with loneliness a lot. I was fortunate and blessed that I could still go to work during lockdown, but I found that weekends were the hardest for me because I didn't have work or work-related issues to distract me, so to speak. So I just found that I felt the silence and the loneliness more acutely then, and I would just, there are some moments where I would just cry on and off for the day just because I just missed having my family and friends around me. So that was definitely a challenge.
Yeah. So what? How do you manage to, when you find yourself in that spiral of sort of despair and loneliness and isolation? What have been some of the turning points for you? What's helped get you out of that when you found yourself in those sort of very dark moments?
Sure. I should say actually at the beginning of lockdown, I tried so hard to suppress all those negative feelings and emotions because I just, I just kept telling myself, you get through this, just you have to find the good in every situation, that kind of thing. So I suppressed a lot of it, but I actually realized that I actually have to let myself be sad, be angry, or feel frustrated because I didn't want them to manifest in other ways. So I rediscovered my love for running. So I actually found that it was a kind of a way of self-care for me, but I actually found that I could, not only was it good for me physically, but mentally and spiritually, because I found that I could actually, talk to God because, I don't believe that there's only one way of praying. I think we're blessed to have, so many ways to communicate with God. And for me, that's definitely been a way to do that. And also just kind of having a moment silence, or like sitting in silence, just to kind of, just to calm down and to just listen. And I feel like, that's been one of the ways that I've been able to communicate with God again, and I found that through that I could have an inner peace afterwards, and I could just kind of learn to let go and kind of like accept that it's a situation that I wasn't in control of, but what I can control is my response to it. So
thank you.
Yeah.
That's really great. And I think the point that you bring out about not masking feelings and emotions is a really, really pertinent one for people, because I think we can all have a tendency to suppress what we're really feeling about things. So thank you. That's a really great point to bring out. And so, Ben, for you, Diana's just talked about not masking feelings. So tell us how you felt when you heard the news about lockdown and having to leave uni and all your friends behind.
Yeah, so it was actually as I was packing up my room to leave Cambridge at the end of last term that I got the email to find out that we wouldn't be coming back. And I think it was really then that the realization dawned that, next term would be looking very different, and that actually it would be 6 months at home, which is a lot longer than I've spent at home in the past kind of 3 to 4 years. So yeah, the kind of realization that would be happening, and also the fact that, Easter term's usually a really fun term to spend with friends at Cambridge, kind of around exams. And the realization that the sadness that wouldn't be happening, and also sadness of not being able to see friends graduate as well. Yeah, I think, just dealing with that. And then when kind of getting back home, just actually taking time to realize that I needed to be more intentional with my routine and not just kind of getting straight stuck into things.
So, I mean, obviously going back into the family home with your parents, you know, it is a big adjustment for you and for them. So what were some of the things that you felt you had to readjust to? Just share some insights about that.
Yeah, so for me, I'm quite practical. I usually kind of get straight on into a project, and for me, it was a real change of actually taking time to realize that my routine, as I normally would with revising, kind of was changing at home, and so actually really fitting into in ways my parents' meal times and kind of normal family routines, and really kind of just being intentional with changing how I would spend my time and kind of helping out around the house more than usual, and doing some washing and not taking advantage of stuff being done for me.
Well done, Ben. I hope all uni students are listening to this. You know, it is good to do your own washing and to maybe cook your parents a meal sometimes. All of those little things really, really, really help. Now, Daniel and Rosie, of course, you've now got lots of opportunity to spend with your children. So how have you managed to build with them and keep the family united?
Yeah, true. To be honest, Karen, the kids have been amazing. Like, they've made it really easy to build, actually. They've been so positive throughout this whole process. I can't, you know, I genuinely can't think of one negative thing they've said about lockdown. They might have said stuff about home learning, but nothing about lockdown and anything to do with that. So they've been amazing.
So the struggle.
Yeah. Dragged ourselves around in the season. I think some of the things that we've tried to instill is, first of all, just letting them know that if they do have a bad day, it's okay for them to have a bad day. Like, we all seem to be taking turns in that. So just helping them feel like that's okay, you know, it's your turn today, we'll have a better day tomorrow. Trying to be realistic with what our expectations are, even with homeschooling, even with things like cleaning, and just, you know, not setting ourselves things that are just too high to achieve. Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
That's so great to hear. Now, Diana, you've already talked about missing your family because obviously they're not living locally. But I know that your life group has been an absolute lifeline for you through this season. So can you tell us a little bit about what the life group has meant to you?
Well, it's definitely been a huge blessing. I've been with my life group since 2018, so I definitely feel like I have a second family here, and you know, I've made lifelong friendships from it. But yeah, what struck me during the lockdown is that, you know, how everybody was affected in so many different ways, and everybody was going through different challenges and difficulties, but at the same time we were all kind of able to lean on one another, kind of listening through what we were all going through, and so we could just lean on each other for support, and also we could, you know, just pray for one another as well, which was really comforting. And one of the things that I got from that as well is that I've been able to see so many breakthroughs as well. Like, it's been a difficult time, but you know, we've seen God do amazing things in people's lives. So I think it just goes to show, you know, that there's strength in unity, and also that, you know, God is faithful through every season, whether, you know, we're going through the storm or, you know, we have this kind of happy moments in life. So it's definitely been a lifeline for me.
Oh, that's so good to hear. And of course, during this this season as well, there was the terrible murder of George Floyd, which has opened up the conversation on racism in society. So it would be great to hear your perspective on that as well, Diana, and also, you know, how being in your life group has helped in those conversations. Because I know right across Kingsgate, after that terrible event, and we had the conversation on race with Pastor Dave and Pastor Agu and Toppy, and then all the life groups, then had these discussions, and lots of people fed back how important it had been for people to maybe express, sometimes for the first time, some of the pain that they carry through being subject to racism. So share a little bit of your story on that.
Yeah, so when I found out about George Floyd's murder, I definitely found it extremely sad and painful. But my initial response was to just kind of remove myself from what was going on in the media and all of the discussions, because it was just too painful, and also because I was just afraid that it was going to be, you know, another one out of many incidences like this that have happened and have just maybe been forgotten about after the media coverage and the hype had gone down. But then I began to see, you know, the start of the Black Lives Matter movement and the protests, and like you said, the discussion within our own church that was led by Pastor Dave, and it was just, for me, it was humbling to see, because not only did it spark discussions within life groups and my own life group as well, but like you so rightly said, it was the first time that I felt like our voices were being heard as a community, and the world was ready to listen. And I'm so grateful that we were given that platform to express ourselves. And I'm guessing that for some people, for many people, you know, it's not easy to talk about these experiences because they are painful and they have been going on for so long. So yeah, it was very humbling to be able to be given that platform. And I think that, you know, the challenge for us now as a community and as a church is to continue with those discussions and that conversations, and, you know, to approach them with humility and love and understanding, and to actually make sure that, you know, we are being anti-racist, you know, as well as talking about it. We encourage the conversation, but actually encourage one another to be anti-racist and to call out racism when we see it. And I think that that's one of the ways we can affect change within our institutions, within, you know, the education system and the justice system, you know, and all those areas.
I mean, it's been really great in, you know, certainly right across all life groups, and I can only trust it in yours as well. You know, there has been an attitude of humility, you know, and a sense of we need to listen to each other, we need to learn from each other, and definitely, you know, we want to together stand united. I think, you know, this is a really important time for us, isn't it? That we really guard the unity of the church, and, you know, even as these conversations are had. And, you know, I just want to say to the whole church, you know, be assured that the conversation on race is continuing, and over the next few weeks and months. And, you know, even though the issue may be off the front pages of the newspapers and off of the news headlines, we do still want to be talking about this and making sure that, you know, as Diana has rightly said, that we really are going to stand for change together. But it's going to take humility, and it's going to take, you know, a sense of standing united together. So thank you, Diana, for sharing that with us. And Ben, I know that life group has been really important for you too, hasn't it? And so while you were at uni, you led a student, well, in Peterborough we call them a student life group, but in Cambridge it's a collective. So you lead a student collective, and I know you've still managed to keep in touch with your gang during lockdown. So what have you learnt about yourself, and what have been some of the challenges that you are facing as a group as you kind of meet together?
Yeah, it's been so brilliant and such a blessing to stay connected in community with the collective. They're such a great group, and it's been, yeah, brilliant to stay in touch with them over the past few weeks. I think, yeah, we've all really grown together, even though it's been online. To still keep that connection has been, yeah, really helpful for each of us. We're all in such different situations. We've all kind of had to move away from uni, but to quite different places across the UK and across the world as well. And so I think for me, I've learned to be a better listener during this time. That actually, you know, I'm someone who kind of naturally likes to fix problems and jump in and try and help, but actually accepting that, you know, just as God enters into our sufferings, we're actually called to enter in with people and listen and just be a supporting shoulder and just to lean on it sometimes. And I think for particularly at the moment with the third year students, especially dealing with such a huge amount of uncertainty around next year and what that looks like, and jobs and even just the next few weeks and months. And I think just for all of us to really kind of come together and know that we're all there for each other and that we're all praying for each other. And actually prayer has been a really important part of this time. And we've actually been going through Pete Gregg's prayer course, which has been a really useful resource for us all, of exploring kind of loads of different areas of prayer. Some areas that we know that we've kind of got, we do all the time, but some areas that we maybe struggle with or haven't really looked into as much. And that's been really interesting to look at areas of unanswered prayer and wrestling with that, but still trusting in God's faithfulness through it all, and actually taking time to listen and be contemplative as well. It's been brilliant.
That's so great to hear. Talking of 4 kids and all the rest of it, Daniel and Rosie, you've already shared how you're navigating challenges with the children, and we're going to see a picture of you and the kids come up now. And so there we are. But we've heard about the children, but what about the challenges in your relationship, you know, between you? You know, what happens when you have a big bust up, for example? I mean, where do you go? I mean, do you go and sit in the car like Rosie came and sat in the car for her meetings? If you're going to have a bust up, you can't really do it in front of the kids. So what happens?
Yeah, well, yeah, we've got a garage as well, but there's options. I think, I mean, certainly we realised even coming here in January that it was going to be a year where there may be some tensions that come in there, just with navigating coming to a new city and new jobs, and then you add lockdown to that 2 months after us arriving. There certainly was some heated moments, some frustrations. We've already mentioned communication; that's probably a big one. But it sort of for us, we saw some marriage counselling several years ago. I can't remember how many years it was now. So we realised that actually we were leaning in like never before in this lockdown season, of just picking up some of those skills and some of those tools that we'd learned from taking on some of that those insights from going to marriage counselling. So that did put us in good stead, didn't it? So things like carving out time for relaxation, and so you know the kids are in bed and making sure we've got some time just to relax together. What other things?
I think even with communication, putting your boundaries around it. So Daniel doesn't like to, I'm a night owl, whereas Daniel's not. So I come alive at 9 o'clock, whereas he's like, no, like getting ready for bed, don't want to over process. So we've had to really compromise on when we can talk about things. So we can't talk about it around the kids, and we can't talk about it late at night. So just being proactive and I guess intentional about we're going to have this conversation and we're going to have it now, and making time for that.
And as well, another thing is just ensuring that we've got a support network in place, which is something you've been really big on and helped us both in terms of just making sure we've still got folks around us, are key, you know, family members, friends, even touching base with our counsellor, just to those health checks, and just making sure that we've got that network in place. I think that's been really helpful as well, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
That's really great to hear. Thank you for sharing that, because, you know, sometimes, you know, we wait until we're in a crisis, you know, before we go and get help. But I think, you know, my advice to any married couple is, doing something like the marriage course, or getting some kind of help and support in before a real crisis hits. It means you've got some tools, doesn't it? So that when something like lockdown happens, you know how to avert some of the typical crisis moments. So I think that is really amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And I just want to give a shout out to single parent families, because Daniel and Rosie talking about how they're able to serve one another and help one another, share the load of the kids, Rosie's well-being hour, things like that. And for those of you who are single parents, you haven't had the opportunity for that. So, I can't imagine just some of what you must be feeling right now, just completely overwhelmed and exhausted. But we just want to just give a big shout out to you and just say, well done. Keep going, keep hanging on in there, keep drawing on all that you can from the Lord, and just from your networks, even if it is remotely. But I just wanted to say that we haven't forgotten you in this season, and you're probably at the very, very sharp end of some of these relational challenges. So just well done, all you single parents. Give yourselves a high five. So yeah, I know, Rosie, as well, you said something to me the other day that just really, I thought was just so helpful. And you mentioned something about, you'd heard this quote, or it might even have been that your counsellor, or you can explain this, but it was just this phrase: just because something's hard, it's not necessarily wrong. Just unpack that for us a little bit.
Yeah, for me, my testimony is, several years ago, like, our marriage had got to a place where it was really hard. And I remember being in our old house and suddenly it dawning on me, this is so hard. And then I suddenly thought, well, it must be over if it's this hard. And, first of all, what a lie that was. But I didn't know of anyone who had been through something so hard and had come out the other side, and it'd be better on the other side. So what was incredible about marriage counselling for us is that it didn't just give us the tools, but it gave us the learning of that, or the realization that it's okay that it's hard. It doesn't mean it's bad. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means that there's something to learn. And so we've just had that for us throughout all of life, marriage, kids, everything, lockdown. It's been our thing, though. People have said, how are you getting on? Like, are you okay? Yeah, it's hard, but that's okay. We can do hard. That's okay. So I think for me, just having that realization of hard is okay, we can do hard, has just been, just really reassuring, actually, and just, not hitting ourselves too hard on the fact when it is really hard and there are challenges, it's still okay.
Absolutely, and I think in one sense that's a great phrase to end our conversation on. Just because it's hard, it doesn't mean that it's wrong. And I think, as we've heard from Diana and Ben, Daniel and Rosie, they've been through some very hard, challenging situations in lockdown, but we've also heard what they've been learning about themselves and how they've also been able to draw on other people and serve other people in the midst of all of that. And, just as we kind of circle right back to that Philippians 2 passage, we're talking about unity and humility and servanthood. And, for all of us, we need to be contending for those in our lives. And I just want to thank Diana and Ben and Daniel and Rosie for sharing some of your insights as to how you've maintained those three very important ingredients through this very challenging season with the people, your nearest and dearest, even if you can't physically be with them. Well, I really hope that you've enjoyed listening to Daniel and Rosie, to Ben and to Diana's lessons from lockdown this week. And I just want to pick up on a couple of things. Both Diana and Ben talked about the importance of life groups. So if you're not in a life group, please, you can go online, you can sign up for one. One of the team would love to get in touch with you. And also Daniel and Rosie talked about marriage counselling, and I just want to recommend something called the Marriage Course. And literally thousands of people up and down the country are making use of that incredible course, particularly in this pressured time of lockdown, where maybe marriage relationships have just come under a little bit of strain. So again, you can go online, you can find out about the Marriage Course as well. And so finally, I just want us to circle right back around to that wonderful passage that we heard at the beginning from Philippians 2. You know, that we want to carry a spirit of unity, a spirit of humility, and a spirit of servanthood as we leave lockdown and as we go through this week and the coming weeks and months. And so I want to pray for us right now that we would have everything that we need to be able to do that. So you might want to close your eyes or put your hand on your heart, or however you feel comfortable. Father God, I just thank you so much that you know and love each person that is watching this message today. Thank you that you understand their hopes and dreams, and you know their fears and anxieties. And I pray, Lord, that whether they're battling with feelings of isolation and loneliness, or whether they're feeling completely overwhelmed by the pressures and the demands that are being made on them, Father, I pray that each and every person would know just your presence and your loving kindness all around. In the mighty name of Jesus. Amen. Well, it's been so great to be with you. And so I'm now going to hand back to the band, who are going to lead us in our final song.